Hi everyone, welcome to the RX Teach Happy Hour. My name is Brenton Wolf, I'm a PharmD, and today we're going to cover my 5 tips to help you land that pharmaceutical industry fellowship. As always, this is a happy hour, so if you want to grab a sip, feel free to go do that now. As for me, I'm drinking some type of whiskey at these things. Today is the Old Grandad 114, which is a very affordable bottle, and I highly recommend it. High proof for those who like that, and honestly, it's pretty good. So, here's to you. Now, we're going to focus on my 5 tips to help you land that pharmaceutical industry fellowship. These are my opinion, I should say. This does not necessarily represent the position of any company or pharmaceutical industry fellowship program. I will say that I was the chief fellow of one of the largest pharmaceutical industry programs out there. I have since accepted a position in the pharmaceutical industry and been there for some time now. I have been on one-on-ones with countless students and helped them prepare for the industry fellowship application season and hopefully land that fellowship position. Having said that, here's my first tip. You need to be what I call a zebra among horses. And this goes back to a very old saying in medicine, which is that when you hear hooves, you should think horses, not zebras. The point of that message is if I have a patient with lab values and their glucose levels are very high, you should not jump to the conclusion of, oh, maybe they're taking a bunch of corticosteroids that I don't know about, and rather, given their BMI, they're probably type 2 diabetic, something along those lines. In interview situations, you want to be the zebra among horses. You really need to stand out from the rest of the crowd. And in order to do that, you have to do what I like to call earn your stripes, right? To become a zebra. There are a lot of ways to earn your stripes. The first one that I always tend to go to is leadership position and leadership experience. That leadership experience can come from pretty much anything, obviously, but most people get it from some kind of student organization. So whether you're involved in SSHP, ASHP, ROCI, IPHO, whatever it is, hopefully you're involved, and if you can get a leadership position in those organizations, that's going to go a long way. The reason this is important is because these fellowship programs want to help harvest the next round of industry leaders. And for that reason, people who are interested in leadership, people who have leadership experience, those things are going to stick out a little bit more and become more important rather than maybe your just contractor position or your entry-level position in the industry. Pretty good. Now, like I said, this leadership experience does not have to come from your time in pharmacy school. This can be at your church or in some kind of group, something you're doing that's a hobby, whatever it is, as long as you can really speak to that leadership experience in an interview, that's what's gonna be important. And actually, that's more important than the experience itself, if I'm being honest. Just because you're the president of some kind of organization, if you can't speak to that leadership experience in an interview, if you can't take the lessons learned from that leadership experience and actually apply it to your work and actually apply it to the things that you're doing, at that point it's just empty experience. Someone could have a much lower position on a executive board or something in their student organization and actually be able to portray the lessons learned in an interview much better than even the president can. And that's actually what's important, because I need to feel that you're interested in leadership and feel that you have that leadership experience. And that's something you're convincing me of as the interviewee, right? You have to portray that as best you can. And so, like I said, there's a ton of ways of getting that experience. Hopefully you're picking something that you're interested in. The other go-to stripe, at least for me, is research experience. Now, I should say, and I should note that I'm a little bit biased when it comes to research experience, because being from the Midwest, there wasn't much industry stuff out here. I didn't really have that industry experience, but I did have a pretty good research background, and I think that really helped get my foot in the door of a medical affairs fellowship, at least for me. So research is gonna be a huge stripe to get if you can. If you can present posters at a congress, if you can publish in a peer-reviewed journals, all of those things are going to stand out a lot on your CV. If you've gone through the process of getting published, you're going to be able to speak to that stuff in a confident way. Research is great because pretty much across therapeutic areas and functional areas, at some point you're going to be asked to take very complex data or information, package that up in some way, and then portray it to an audience, whether that audience is stakeholders. If you're working cross-functionally and you're speaking with statisticians or something, you need to be able to speak to them differently and portray things differently than if you're speaking to a commercial colleague. They have different background expertise as SMEs, and you have to be able to adjust the hat that you're wearing, but also the way that you're portraying that information so that it's understandable by the audience. If you're doing research and presenting posters, you know what that feels like to present to a student versus presenting to a faculty member versus presenting to someone who has a very deep understanding of the literature and whatever particular topic you're talking about. That research experience and that presentation experience is going to very heavily apply to your success as a fellow and how you do in these interviews and how you're able to speak to research and therefore how you're able to succeed in that fellowship position. One way to know if you're gaining these stripes in a sufficient fashion is if you have some kind of reputation on campus and with your classmates. If you're known for being a leader, if you're known for volunteering all the time, if you're known for the research that you do on campus, all of those things are great indicators that that's a stripe for you. And you can focus on those things to help separate you from the rest of the pack of all of the students that are going to be applying to fellowship programs. Because again, these fellowships are very competitive. The success rate is lower than residencies, unfortunately. That's just a hard truth. So earning these stripes is going to be drastically important. Tip number two. Tip number two is to start early. Now, unlike me, who didn't find out about industry fellowship programs until like halfway through his P3 year, I really suggest starting as early as you possibly can. The reason for that is because gaining those stripes can take a lot of time. Research, for example, if you're taking all the time it requires to do the research from start to finish and publish in a journal, that can take years and years and years potentially. If you're going to be the president of an organization, you probably were president-elect as a second-year student, and in order to become president-elect, you were probably highly involved as a first-year student. Earning those stripes takes a lot of time, and for that reason, the earlier you can start, the better. That's not to say that if you're like me and you start very late, that you aren't going to be successful, because obviously I made it through well enough. The point is you're stacking the odds against you if you wait and wait and wait. All right, tip number three is crucial. Crucial. It's also maybe the most cliche one on this list, and that is to be yourself. Being yourself is incredibly important in an interview situation. There are a lot of reasons for this. The first is that it's going to prevent you from coming off incredibly boring, right? If I'm in an interview with you and you come across as so overtly professional that you aren't able to crack a smile, you're just worried about, not coming across smart. If you've sunken into a personality that isn't actually you, you're going to come across as very boring.
Boring. No.
And that's an issue, because if I offer you a position, that means I'm signing up for working very closely with you for at least the next year, which means if I'm in meetings with you, I want to be able to interact, I want to be able to laugh a little bit, I want to be able to talk about things that maybe aren't work related some of the times. And having said that, you also need to come across as confident and competent, right? If in an interview situation, you're not being yourself, if you're just a stick in the mud, I'm not going to be interested in you, because you're not going to be fun to work with. And being fun to work with is way more important than you ever think as a student. I promise you, having now been on the other side, you have to come across as excited, confident, competent, someone I could joke around with, someone I would like working with. That influences my decision so much. That first impression is crucial. It's way more important than your CV. Your CV gets your foot in the door, and then after that, it's just about fit, culture, interactions with the team. That's really what's important. And if you're trying to be someone that you're not throughout those interviews, you're not going to make that cut, right? You're just not going to be. Not only that, if you do somehow succeed in an interview situation and get an offer having not been yourself the entire time, you're signing up for a team that thinks you're something that you aren't, which means you have two options. At some point, disappoint them when you are who you really are. Or two, you have to maintain this persona that's fake for at least another year, normally 2 years, and then you have to, maybe spin that off into a position at some point with the company. That is not a situation you want to be in, so please be yourself. And honestly, you should be evaluating the company as much as they're evaluating you. I turned down a couple of, second round and third round interviews from companies that I just was not vibing with. And the reason for that is it takes a lot of time to prep for these interviews. And if you're in a situation where you get an offer and you're just going to turn it down anyways because you don't like the people there, or you don't like the culture or whatever, you should have stopped, in my opinion, much earlier in the process. Why spend all that time? Why waste all that time just to turn down an offer? I would have turned that interview offer down way earlier just to save myself the pain and the time. Another sip. Gets better every time. Tip number 4 is to do your research and know your why. This is so crucial, guys. You have to do your research. You should be looking at the company brochures, which are generally put out well before the interviews ever start, and you need to look at a lot of different things. You need to know the company mission, the vision, some of the company history if possible, their flagship drugs if possible. You need to know the details about the position that you're applying to at that company. And you have to know all of this because in the interview, they're gonna ask you about it, like what excites you about company X, Y, or Z? And the answer to that question is generally something that you read in the brochure, right? So it takes time to do that, but that research is crucial. It also helps you make a decision between which position you're going to apply to and which position you're going to pass over. The other very important thing about research is that it prevents you from asking the questions that you shouldn't ask. If you ask a question where the answer is right there in the brochure, or the answer is very easily found through a Google search, you shouldn't have asked that question. That's the wrong question to ask me at the end of an interview. You should have prepared better and known the answer to that question so that you could ask questions that are not easy to find in other ways. That's the proper way to do it. But again, research is required in order to get to that point, and that's going to take some serious time because you're going to be doing that for all of the positions that you're generally interested in. The other part of this tip is knowing your why. Why? Guys, this is so crucial because again, we're going to be asking you why this company, why this functional area, why this very particular position, why the industry in general. You can't say that I worked at CVS during school and I hated it so much that I figured I would apply to the industry. Even if that's a little bit true, which was certainly the case for me, you can't go into it that way, right? Like from the fellowship perspective, we want to make sure that you're genuinely interested in what we're trying to do here. Again, the point is for us to retain you if possible. Like that's the goal here. You can't go in for the wrong reasons. And if you do, at some point it's going to become obvious. We're going to find out in the interview. We're going to be able to tell that you're not really interested or you don't really know why you're here. Or worst case scenario, we're going to figure that out in your first year of fellowship and kind of regret hiring you, right? Like those are the options. If we regret hiring you for the fellowship, we're probably not going to hire you for a position after the fellowship. That's just how it goes. Last tip number 5, and thank God because this is starting to hit me a little bit. You cannot bite off more than you can chew. That is crucial to understand. Applying to fellowships is a very difficult process. For a position that you're successful in, for instance, you might have a first round interview, a second round interview, a third round interview, one networking session, a second networking session, a fourth round interview with a presentation and a Q&A, and then you're waiting a month or two until you actually hear the decision as to whether or not you got the position. If you get to that point for 3 or 4 different positions, that is so many hours of work and preparation and then just straight interview time, not to mention the potential travel you have to do to go to the networking sessions or your on-site interviews. It is a huge time dedication and you should not take that lightly. For me, it was the most stressful part of my 4 years of pharmacy school by a landslide. And I don't say that to scare you. I say that to prevent you from making some of the mistakes that I did. And I applied to too many programs. I didn't have the time to dedicate to each position as best as I could, and therefore I wasn't successful in as many positions as I could have been. So again, this comes back to knowing your why. If, for instance, you are very interested in the industry because you know you want to be an MSL, then you should probably very highly prioritize field-based positions in the industry. If you're applying to a different medical affairs position and in the interview I ask you, hey, why are you interested in this position? And you say, oh, I want to be an MSL. That's the wrong answer, right? Because for that position, let's say it's medical information or something, the point of me bringing you on as a fellow is to retain you and hopefully hire you after. Not to spend all this time and money on you developing and then send you off to a different company to be an MSL. That's not how this process is supposed to work from our perspective. So knowing your why means that you're going to be able to parse down that massive list of fellowships into something that you actually care about, and therefore will hopefully be manageable for you to apply to all of those as you see fit and succeed. Your risk of failure actually goes through the roof when you apply to too many fellowships, because again, you're not going to have the time to properly prepare for all of those interviews and all of those presentations and all of that travel. It's just not possible. Spend a lot of time on your why statement and then stick true to it. Pass up the positions that you're not actually interested in. I know that the success rate for fellowships is much lower than residencies. You cannot let that affect you. Be strict as you can possibly be, and hopefully from there you'll be okay. So like I said, guys, earn your stripes, be yourself, do your research and know your why. Don't bite off more than you can chew, and start as early as you possibly can. And honestly, your chances of success are gonna go through the roof. I wish you all the best. I really genuinely hope you get a fellowship. I do this just because I'm interested in your success. If you have questions that I didn't answer, drop them in the comments below. I will try to get to them. You can message me on LinkedIn. If you want to schedule some one-on-one time, I am more than happy to do so. You can ask people that I've talked with before. I really am interested in helping you as much as I can. I'm not in it for anything else other than drinking a little bit of whiskey, if I'm being honest. So with that, cheers to you. Good luck in this recruitment season, and I wish you the best.